So, recently, everybody's favorite news source, well, I can't qualify that it's everybody's favorite news source, but as a millennial, it is my favorite news source. The Young Turks recently, semi-recently, came out with a video, this is back in April, pointing out the somewhat hypocritical nature of this woman named Alexis Bloomer. So, Anna Kasparian, I don't know why Anna Kasparian is even on the Young Turks. Isn't she Armenian? What is she doing? That's just my... anyways, let's not get off topic. Basically, Alexis Bloomer also, she basically stated everything I said about millennials often being entitled, whiny little brats who want everything handed to them, and Anna Kasparian throws a absolute fit. Let's see what she has to say.
I have a big problem with people labeling millennials as lazy because the statistics and the data simply does not back that notion up. Millennials are more educated than the generation before them, and that's evidenced by the fact that they have obtained a college education at a higher rate than the generation before them, okay?
Not a free college education, by the way.
Not a free college education. We're saddled with student loan debt, and it's not our fault. For all the people who are like, well, then you should have really thought about it before going to college. We don't really have much of a choice. If you don't go to college, your income takes a hit considerably. If you do go to college, well, then you have the issue of student loan debt. Student loans were never really that much of a problem until until recent decades, right? So between 1982 and 2012, college tuition more than doubled. The average more than doubled.
Okay, so millennials are more educated than the generation before them. Well, okay, we looked at the data and she seems to be right. Besides college bachelor degrees, which they are about neck and neck with the 35 to 44 range, but you have to remember that the 35 to 44 range has also had an additional 10 years to receive that bachelor's degree, whereas millennials have the same rate and they've had much less time. So I agree with her there, that millennials are higher educated, but that does not translate into not being entitled. In fact, I think you could attribute the education rate to sort of being pushed by the older generations to go out and get an education, because those older generations have performed very tedious work in order to afford an education for the next generation. This has been repeated throughout history over and over, and it's pretty much culminated with the millennial generation going into college. Also, student loan debt is a result of government subsidies to student loans. They basically, if you don't know, the government basically guarantees all student loans, saying that if push comes to shove, the government will eventually pay back the loans. With what money? Well, just stop asking questions, Jesus.
Okay, so when people turn around and they look at us and they're like, you guys are just entitled and you expect everything handed to you. No, we work extremely hard. Many of us have more than one job. Many of us work longer than 8 hours a day, okay? Some of us are working 12 hours a day. That's just a regular work day for us. And for people to turn around and say that we're lazy and entitled frustrates me to no end. We don't want handouts, okay? We're not looking for things handed to us on a silver platter. The only thing millennials want is the same opportunities that the generations before them had, including affordable education, including decent pay for the work that they do.
So when she says this, she does not have any proof. She does not cite the data like she did for the college educational levels. And she basically offers up some anecdotal evidence that somewhat proves her point. Well, if you look at this graph, this is by the Department of Labor Statistics, you can see the labor participation has changed immensely over the past about 20 years. They even offer estimates for the 2024 labor participation of each age category. So if you look at the 16 to 19, it's decreased. It's literally decreased 10% every 10 years. So millennials, if they were born in 1982, they started to hit the labor force in about 1998. You can see that since then, the labor participation for the 16 to 19 category has decreased 10% every decade since. And you believe you're not entitled? Even look at the 20 to 24 range, that's decreased. In fact, that's one of the only categories that has decreased significantly besides the 16 to 19 category. In fact, if you look at the 55 to 64 range, you can see that they've had to increase their labor participation. Why? Well, you know what? You should read an economics book, because there's something called supply and demand. If there is a lowered labor supply due to millennials not wanting to work, there obviously will be a higher demand for labor. And that higher demand for labor does not encourage millennials in the slightest. In fact, what it does, it encourages grandpa to get off of his recliner and work. Why? He does it to provide. He provides for these millennials who are entitled. They sit around their house. The word fucking NEETs. Was NEET ever a thing? Not employed, educational, or training? No. It came into existence after the millennials hit the mainstream labor force. And you know what? Look at the drug rates. They hit a low in 1991. And as soon as you see these millennials move up the ranks, you can see the drug usage of marijuana specifically has increased significantly. In fact, the rates they were at in 2013 are pretty much double of every single statistic in 1991. So yeah, millennials are entitled. They love drugs and they love to not work. So if you're going to argue that the increased education of millennials correlates with the labor force participation, thank you for proving my point. If you're being educated, you at least have some free time. You at least have a minimum of 10 hours per week that you can devote to earning a paycheck and improve your own economic libido. But instead, what you prefer to do is sit around, pretend as though you are changing the world for the better, and smoke a lot of marijuana. You filthy fucking reefers.